Key words. Hello, in this video I will show you a simple, easy way to improve your reading comprehension of college textbooks by simply highlighting keywords. First, I will demonstrate by reading an actual college textbook, and then I'll go into the theory as to why my keyword method works. The textbook I will be reading is Principles of Management from Saylor.org. Saylor.org has a variety of free college textbooks. The textbook I am reading now is Principles of Management. This is Chapter 1, Introduction to Principles of Management. To highlight the keywords on the web page, I downloaded the Weava Highlighter from the Chrome Web Store, and this allows me to highlight the keywords from the college textbook on the web page. So, let's go to Chapter 1 and highlight the keywords. So Chapter 1, Introduction to Principles of Management. Keyword is management. What's in it for me? Reading this chapter will help you do the following. Learn who managers are and about the nature of their work. Keyword here is managers. 2, know why you should care about leadership, entrepreneurship, and strategy. There's 3 key words. Leader, entrepreneur, and strategy. 3, know the dimensions of the planning, organizing, leading, controlling framework. So the POLC framework, which stands for plan, organize, lead, and control. 4, learn how economic performance feeds social and environmental performance. So we're talking about performance, economic, social, and environmental. So economic, social, and environmental. And then we're talking about performance. 5, understand what performance means at the individual and group level. So we're talking about performance again. What kind of performance? Individual and group. 6, create your survivor's guide to learning and developing principles of management. Nothing to highlight here. Okay. So, first paragraph. Okay, we're betting that you already have a lot of experience with organization, teams, and leadership. You've been through schools and clubs, participated in social or religious groups, competed in sports or games, or taken on full or part-time jobs. Some of your experience was probably pretty positive, but you were also likely wondering sometimes, isn't there a better way to do this? So we're talking about organizations, your own experiences, and then is there a better way to manage organizations? Okay, and then next paragraph, after participating in this course, we hope that you will find the answer to be yes. There is a better way. While management is both art and science, with our help you can identify and develop skills essential to better managing your and others' behavior where organizations are concerned. Okay, so we're talking about management. It's an art, it's a science, and the book is going to teach us skills. Again, managing behaviors, the actions of other people, and yourself within organizations. Okay, so this is a good point for me to go through the theory behind the keyword methodology. Okay, so there's 3 principles of learning theory here. 1, compress, 2, anchor, and 3, decode. Compress. The brain does better if you compress large amounts of information into smaller chunks. So even though you may need to learn a lot, you still need to identify the most important parts of the information. So you have to go through a process of compression. So less is more. So the way to learn a chapter is not to try to memorize every single word, but you have to extract the key words and the key concepts. So number one is compression, less is more. Number two is anchor. So not all information is the same. Some information has a higher rank because of it's a higher level of generality, or it's more important information. Okay, so these need to serve as anchors, and that's what the key words represent. They're anchors. And then the third concept is decoding. When writers write, for various reasons, frequently their written product is not optimized for the reader. So in communication, you have the writer and the reader. When you're talking, it's the speaker and it's the listener. Now, when you're communicating in the written form, the writer has different levels of interest as well as understanding of the reader's needs, and also they have different styles of writing. But frequently, what they are producing is not optimized for reading. So you as a student or a reader have to decode the information. If the writer is a better writer, then you have to decode less. So what if we are forced to use a textbook for a college course, then we have to do some decoding on our own. So these concepts, compress, anchor, and decode, are demonstrated in this key highlighting keywords process that I just did in the beginning of this chapter. Okay. First of all, notice that probably only maybe 10% of the words were highlighted. Sometimes I didn't highlight a whole sentence. Sometimes I only highlighted, for example, in the first paragraph here, I only highlighted 2 words out of this whole paragraph. Organization's better way. So this demonstrates a very important fact that you need to know when you're reading a college textbook or other writing. There's a lot of words that can be ignored or put at a lower rank. So in this paragraph here, this is just a breezy introduction. We're betting blah, 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 blah. Okay. So this could have been summarized by saying, this chapter in this book is about how better to run, the best ways to run organizations. That's a more direct way to say this particular paragraph. So the best sentences for the reader are simple sentences with the subject first, and the information is front-loaded, and the point is there. So looking at this paragraph here, we're betting how would I write this if I am trying to best communicate to the reader? I would say this chapter in this book is about better ways to run organizations. And then I might put a second sentence, again, reformatting this information. This will help you have better experiences in various organizations, either as a team member or as a leader, jobs, religious. These are all various different examples. But they're all lower level and maybe don't even need to know this stuff. So in any given sentence, there may be only a few key words. In any given paragraph, some sentences can be disregarded. But the reason why we have to do this is because, one is the writing. Frequently, there's 2 parts to it. You always want to take responsibility for your learning, but know this, and this is from my experience from reading many, many college textbooks. Frequently, when you don't understand something and you're putting in a good effort, it may not be you. It may just be bad writing. And I've seen a lot of bad writing. The majority of writing that I've come across is not good. What I mean by that is it's not optimized for the reader. Okay? And so the reason why we need to extract this is because we're highlighting the parts that are the most important. Why do we need to do this? Because the brain can't handle all this random information. That's what the brain's for. It's to sort and to filter the most important information. Otherwise it's just a phone book. So now let's look at the second paragraph here. There is a little bit more information, but basically what do we get here is that management is an art and science, and this book is going to teach us skills to better manage behaviors, ours and others, in the context of organizations. So that makes more sense. Furthermore, when you're reviewing, again, this is the first step. When you're reviewing, when you go back through and read it, you can focus on the keywords, but also the keywords give you a branch point for you to explain this to other people or to summarize information. Okay, so let's look at this first section here. It's an introduction. What is this chapter about? Okay, this chapter is about managers. Okay, being a manager involves being a leader, entrepreneur, and strategy. POLC is a major framework. What is POC? Plan, organize, lead, and control. So you want the most, and notice how I'm highlighting the most important part of the word. It's leader, not leadership. And then this one is about performance. What types? 3 kinds: economic, social, and environmental. We'll also talk about performance, individual, and group, 2 types. So now alternatives to highlighting. If you have this as a paper, you can also use you can print out the page and use a highlighter. I also think it helps to have several different colors, maybe yellow, pink, blue, and green. Have a primary and then secondary. When you highlight, also make sure you do not want to highlight every single word. I've seen people do that. I think that's just a slow form of reading, and it is not achieving anything. Another thing to do is, let's say you are reading something and you don't have a highlighter. You can go through this process in your brain. For example, when I was first reading this chapter, I just used my mental highlighter. I read the first sentence, learned who managers are and about the nature of work, and I said, okay, the keyword is manager. Now, what this does is it forces you to actively read. And actually, this might actually highlight faster if you were able to print it out. But now let me show you, now that I've given you some background, let me demonstrate with this next chunk here. All right, so starting here, before getting ahead of ourselves, so this whole, before getting ahead of ourselves, that doesn't even need to be there. Just what is management? Okay, so let alone principles of management. This is not a well-constructed sentence. So basically it says, what is management and what are principles of management? Okay, so the key word here is management. Okay, here a manager's primary challenge is to solve problems creatively. So a manager has to solve problems. Okay. You should view management. Let's click this, the art of getting people, okay, when we put the cursor over the word, the art of getting things done through efforts of other people. Okay, so it's here management. Finally, here's a definition. The art of getting things done through other people. Okay, so there's 3 parts to it. So management is 1, an art, 2, getting things done, and you're doing it through other people. So that's the definition, and a manager has to solve problems. So then it says we draw this definition from the biography of Mary Parker Follett. Okay, that's the source. Okay, so Mary Parker Follett, book is called Profit of Management. Okay, so she's famous, Mary Parker Follett. So Follett was a social worker, consultant, and author of books on democracy, human relations, and management. She worked as a management and political theorist, introducing such phrases as conflict resolution, authority, power, and task of leadership. Okay. This is an interesting biography. Okay, so the definition of management, then we break this off here. This is a biography, so I'm going to say right here, if I had a pencil, I would put a marker right here to say that this goes into a biography of Follett. So you need to look at the structure. This should actually probably be broken down into multiple paragraphs. So the definition of management is management is the art of getting things done through the efforts of other people. Managers have to solve problems. Then this next chunk talks about Mary Follet, who is Mary Parker Follet, who came out with this definition. She's known as the prophet of management. Mary Parker Follet, American social worker and consultant, author of books on democracy, human relations, management. Okay, so she's a management consultant, prophet of management. Blah, blah, blah. So some key terms here. Came up with conflict resolution, authority and power, and task of leadership. All right, so to paraphrase here, so breaking down this paragraph, management is the art of getting things done through the efforts of other people. Managers need to solve problems. This definition comes from Mary Parker Follet. Who is she? She is known as the prophet of management. She was a management consultant. She came with different theories and ideas, including conflict resolution, authority, power, and task of leadership. So if I'm able to rephrase this while including all the key information, and I can say this to other people, that's how you truly understand the information. I like this because the writing here, there's books that write better, there's books that write worse, okay? And this is a style that I've seen. It's kind of like an attempt to be casual and friendly, but it's actually aggravating because the reality is every time you force a reader to read a word and have to think, you're causing strain. So the more fluid and simple the writing is, the better. So we're transforming this into better writing. Okay, so next is actually, this should be another paragraph here. The principles of management are the means by which you actually manage, that is, get things done through others, individually, in groups, or in organizations. Okay. For example, the principles of management so this word then, that's a filler. It doesn't even need to be there. The principles of management is just an attempt to be flowery. The principles of management are the means by which you actually manage. That is, get things done through other people. Okay, again, eliminating the filler words. Okay, principles of management are the means by which you actually manage. Get things done. Okay, through others. Individually, in groups, or in organizations. Organization is, okay. So the principle of management is how you manage. Principles of management is about getting things done through other people. So other people getting things done. I'm going to say in the context of organizations. Okay, formally defined, another filler word, the principles of management are the activities that plan, organize, and control the operation of the basic elements, people, materials, machines, methods, money, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here we go. Principles of management are the activities, plan, organize, control. Plan, organize, control, operations are the basic elements of people, materials, machines, methods, money, and markets. Operations, so involving people, materials, and various other things. Basic elements, we'll call this elements. Providing direction and coordination. And giving leadership. Okay, so leadership to human efforts so as to achieve the sought objectives of the enterprise. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, starting here. So again, there should be a paragraph break here. So it's a different, what I mean by paragraph break is it's a different chunk of information. So the first chunk is the definition of management, as defined by Mary Parker Foley, which is the art of getting things done through the efforts of other people. Then the second chunk is the biography of Mary Parker Foley, who is the prophet of management, came up with concepts such as conflict resolution, authority, power, and the task of leadership. And then the second chunk is here, which is the principles of management. Principles of management is about getting things done through others in the context of an organization. So principles of management, plan, organize, control, operations, which are the activities of the organization, elements, which include people, materials, machines, methods, money, and markets. This provides direction and coordination, leadership to humans, and the objectives of the enterprise. So to achieve the goals of the organization. So reading through this here, principles of management. Principles of management is about achieving the goals of the enterprise or the organization. So principles of management is about achieving the goals of the organization. It involves planning, organizing, controlling, giving direction, coordination, and leadership, controlling operations and elements of the organization. So the sentence is constructed kind of badly, so the keywords helps us like rephrase it. So the keywords, by highlighting the keywords, it also then allows us to then paraphrase or rephrase sentences that are not constructed ideally for understanding. So now that is a third chunk of this mega paragraph. Now we come to a fourth chunk, which talks about Henri Fayol. And what I mean by a sentence should be front-loaded is this. The fundamental notion of principles of management was developed by French management theorist Henri Fayol. This is backward structure in terms of reading. The brain does rather have subject, object, verb, and an active voice. And it's in smaller pieces. For example, Henri Fayol was a French management theorist. Henri Fayol developed the fundamental notion of principles of management. So Henri Fayol came up with the fundamental notion of principles of management. So he came up with principles of management. He was a French management theorist, 1841, 1925, so around the 1900s. So historically, French management theorist. Okay, so another thing too is when you're rephrasing this, it's better to identify the references of all the pronouns. So it says here, he is actually Henri Fayol. So when you're reading it, rephrasing it, it's better to repeat it. So here we go. Henri Fayol was a French management theorist, 1925, who died in 1925. Henry Fayol developed the fundamental notion of principles of management. So there's two facts here. And then Henry Fayol came up with the POLC framework. POLC framework is plan, organize, lead, control. It's a framework. So here we go. The POLC framework is the dominant management framework in the world. So it's a framework. So here's an example of a sentence that, or phrases that don't need to be there. While undergoing very important changes in content, the brain has a hard time processing this information. Okay, so let me show you the sentence and why it's hard to process and it has to be decoded. First of all, it says he. Who's he? Okay, now the writing might be, now from a writing standpoint, it might be weird to keep repeating Henry Fayol, but the brain needs to, you need to make things as easy as possible. So when you just put he, the brain has to say, oh, he is Henry Fayol. So when you're rephrasing this, so if you're writing your own notes, you actually need to put Henry Fayol is credited with POLC. So you also want to start with the acronym POLC. What is POLC? It's like a tree. POLC is plan, organize, lead, control. It's a framework. And it's the dominant management framework in the world now, even now. And it says here, while undergoing very important changes in content. Unnecessary. Unnecessary, you can have that in the background. It says C. Henry Fayol, General and Industrial Management. So that was his book title. That's a famous book. For this reason, principles of management are often discussed or learned using a framework using POLC. There we go. It's a framework. Kind of repeated itself. So let me show you how I would go through, now that this has been highlighted. Now, if this was written, for example, by me, it would have read a little bit differently. But, so here's a textbook, and this demonstrates you the concept of extracting keywords, so that's compression. The keywords are anchors, also but decoding, and then putting words in a way that's better for the brain. Okay. What are the best ideas for the brain? The best ones are if you have simple sentences. Now, they can be long sentences, but they need to be simple, meaning subject, object, verb. Okay? And where you repeat the subject and do not use pronouns. When you come across an acronym like POLC, it's better to start with the POC acronym, POLC, and then expand that out. So it's always about starting with, you want it front-loaded, subject, object, verb, but you also want to start with general first and then expand out. So, and also when you come across a major paragraph like this, if you were to have a pencil, you want to break it down into sub-paragraphs. So this is a little bit different concept than when you do English composition. In terms of what I mean by why did I break it up into different chunks? Because they're different concepts that just were lumped together. So here we go. First chunk. Here is this. This is how I would explain to you using this textbook as a reference point. Here we go. Okay. Definition management. Management is the art of getting things done through the efforts of other people. Definition management by Mary Parker Follet. Died 1933. Let's put the death date. So when you have a range of dates, just remember the final date, or rounded number, 1900. 1933, 1900. Okay, so here we go. Definition management. Management is the art of getting things done through the efforts of other people. Definition management from Mary Parker Follet, 1900. Managers need to solve problems creatively. Okay, that's the first chunk. The next chunk is a small biography of Mary Parker Follet. Mary Parker Foley, prophet of management, famous management consultant, came up with ideas such as conflict resolution, authority power, and a task of leadership. Chunk number 3. Principles of management. Principles of management is how to get things done through other people in the context of an organization. Principles of management is about achieving the goals of the organization. Principles of management involve plan, organize, control, controlling of operations, elements of the organization, including people and machines, money. Principles of management also involve providing direction, coordination, and leadership to human efforts. So notice how I kept repeating principles of management. So another concept in learning is that the brain likes anchors, but it also needs to have connections. That's why you keep repeating the subject. Okay, now the last chunk of this paragraph is about Henry Fayol. So Henry Fayol, 1900, died 1925. Henry Fayol, French management theorist. Henry Fayol developed principles of management, POM, principles of management. Henry Fayol came up with POLC. What is POLC? POLC is a framework. POLC stands for Plan, Organize, Lead, Control. POLC, developed by Henry Fayol. POLC, the Henry Fayol POLC framework is still the dominant management framework in the world. That's why we're studying it right now. The title of Henry Fayol's famous book is General and Industrial Management. Principles of Management. Principles of Management. Henry Fayol developed Principles of Management, and he developed the framework, POLC framework, for management. See how that makes more sense? So that also, so several things that I did with this paragraph is this. So you have this large paragraph, which actually has 4 subparagraphs. My recommendation, when I had a pencil, I would actually draw a line and break down these 4 subparagraphs. If I'm a writer, I would actually break this down into 4 paragraphs. Why? Because when I'm writing, my number one goal is to try to, so that my reader has comprehension. Okay. Another thing too is highlighting keywords. Also know that sometimes the writer is not good. Honestly, some of these sentences are very awkward. You want to rephrase sentences with the keywords, but also you want to do subject, object, verb. If you're doing a subject, if a subject has done is involved in multiple statements, you want to repeat it. For example, Henry Fayol, French management theorist. Henry Fayol, 1900s. Henry Fayol, Principles of Management, and POLC framework. Henry Fayol, General and Industrial Management. You need to keep repeating Henry Fayol because you need to anchor it to the next closest relevant anchor. So for this last chunk, Henry Fayol is the anchor that we have to put everything back, connect everything back into. So that's how I approach this particular paragraph. Okay, well, let's do a little, okay, good. Let's look at this paragraph maybe a little bit easier. So managers are required in all activities of organizations. So managers are in organizations, and we're talking about activities. So budgeting, designing, selling, creating, financing, accounting, and artistic presentation. That's a lower rank. So the key things is this. Managers are required in the activities of organization. Managers are required. Organizations need managers. Managers are required in all activities of organization. Organizational activities include budgeting, designing, selling, creating, financing, accounting, artistic presentation, etc. The larger organization, the more managers are needed. Okay, self-evident. That probably is not worthy of even being highlighted. Everyone employed in an organization is affected by management principles, processes, policies, and practices as they are either a manager or subordinate to a manager, and usually they are both. Okay, these comments are self-evident, and Anyway, to summarize this particular, don't add too much. It's just kind of a filler paragraph. But basically, it comes down to this. Managers are involved in many activities inside of an organization. Okay, well, let's just finish off this first section. Managers do not spend all their time managing. Okay, so what? All right, this is not a very useful sentence. Also, too, is if you do, it's better to have a sentence constructed in a positive way, which is versus a negative way. Here it says managers do not spend all their time managing. Okay, they don't not. So what do they do? So if you have a sentence that says not something, to really have a better understanding, it's actually good to do not but also elaborate onto the other side of not. So this is not that good sentence. It says when choreographers are dancing apart, they are not managing. Okay, nor are office managers managing when they personally check out a customer's credit. Okay, these first two lines can be completely ignored. Some employees perform only part of their functions described as managerial, and to that extent, they are mostly managers in limited areas. For example, those who are assigned the preparation of plans in an advisory capacity to a manager, to that extent, are making management decisions by deciding which of several alternatives to present to the management. However, they have no participation in the function of organizing, staffing, and supervising, and no control over the implementation of selecting from those recommended. Even independent consultants are managers, since they get things done through others. Those others happen to be clients. Of course, if advisors or consultants have their own staff reports to become managers in the full sense of definition, they must develop business plans, hire, train, organize, and motivate their staff members, establish their internal policies that will facilitate the work and direct it, and represent the group and its work to those outside its firm. This whole last paragraph could be ignored. Or you could summarize it like this. Everybody in an organization could potentially do some amount of managerial work, either a lot or a little, depending upon their role and depending upon the task.